So, hello, and welcome to this. This will be the first video in a series on the brains. Yep, where we're gonna be looking at things that we like. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So on this thing, we're probably going to look at some games, maybe a movie or something. Maybe, yep.
Yeah. Video games, movies, maybe even board games.
So sure to stick around.
Is that something out of our house?
Just a cat.
Cat.
And so, to commemorate what we're talking about, I think we're going to do our first review on a classic franchise that's sort of shaped our lives, and that'd be the Battlefield franchise.
Yes.
So, this is the first review, so chances are things are going to get cleaned up as we go along, but I think we're going to take a pretty broad strokes on this. I think we'll start off with an introduction and talk about it and our history with the franchise. Then we'll look into the games one by one, the ones that we really played more than anything else, because we only played some of them, and talk about their merits and why they're important. Okay, so in general, I think, being brothers, we played a lot of the similar ones, but our involvement was different depending on, the era and all that sort of crap. I started with Battlefield 3 way back in 2012, 2013 maybe. It wasn't straight after it came out, it was a little bit later. So things had evolved and the meta had changed a bit. I wasn't recommended by a friend, I just sort of picked it up and then I started playing, and this is right after I was playing Halo Reach non-stop, pretty much. So to have a brand new game which wasn't Call of Duty, it wasn't small kill boxes and shooting in hallways, it was wide open spaces and vehicles and excitement and friends, this was something special, this was. What about you?
Well, mine was along the same lines. I was first introduced to it when you brought it over and said, hey, this game is cool, and I played it. It wasn't Call of Duty. I thought it sucked. I played it, and I thought it was really good.
Okay. Loser. Fucking...
Shut the fuck up.
Okay, well, this... Battlefield 3 came along at a weird time. I think people prefer Bad Company and have better memories about it. But Battlefield 3 was distinct, At the time, it was 2011, you had your Black Ops, you had your Modern Warfare, Halo Reach had come out, and people liked it, even though in retrospect people don't. So it was
Get some help.
It was in like a perfect sort of bubble. With that being said, I think we should probably look at these chronologically before we go too much into it and just diatribe and speak about mindless shit. So the first one of the series that we played would, of course, be Battlefield 3. And this changed my opinion on video games for a good long while, and I thought as soon as I played it, we'd peaked. Multiplayer was never going to get better than this. There was nothing that could compare. It was just this unbelievable mix of great maps, awesome gunplay, destructible environments. That was the first game that I played with proper destructible environments, and it changed my life forever. You gotta say something. I can't be the only one talking this whole entire fucking review.
Well, along the same lines as you, it was just simply great, just being able to play a game that wasn't just spawn in, die, and then just maybe have a little bit of kills here and there, because that was all the Call of Duty and Halo phase that we ever went through. It was just spawn, die, and it was just boring. When, well, of course, it was obviously a lot of fun with it, coming with Halo Reach, with the flying around, the memories that you would get in Halo, but that's an entirely different story. Battlefield was the one that really introduced me to how vehicles can really change just everything.
Well, then how about, well, let's just break down. How would a battle usually go in Battlefield 3 versus, say, something today, like you have your battle royales and all your other bullshit? Like, what's...
Man, we're boomers. So, what would happen is, in a typical game, let's say Call of Duty Black Ops 4, because that is common right now.
Is it? Do people play Black Ops? Cold War just came out though, and
Yeah,
Modern
I
Warfare.
know.
Black Ops 4 is like 3 years old at this point.
I know.
No one's playing Black Ops 4.
No one likes you. Well, what happens? So, your typical Call of Duty match. You spawn in, you get your guns. Shut up, clock in, and load up. You get to run with your group for a little bit, and then you die to someone. Or you get one kill, and then someone else comes around the corner and kills you. Then your friend kills them, and then you spawn in on the other side of the map, run around this small little area, get killed, get some kills, unlock a UAV, knife the watermelon, and then eventually win.
It's a very repetitive, very quick cycle. It's all based around get in.
Short attention span.
It's short attention span games. It's very much the concept of being able to really work in a real twitchy, quick way. You build your classes around how many kills can I get in the short amount of time. You know, matches go for anywhere for 10 to 20 minutes. It's very, very fast paced. Battlefield has sort of never really caught up to that, and it's never reached the sort of degree that you get from those mil sims like Armor and all that. It's not that detailed, but it's never been as fast as Call of Duty or Halo. It's just this weird middle ground where it's fast enough to go and carry a match, but also so meandering. Like in a Battlefield game, when you do die, it's not a matter of, oh, well, you know, sucks to be me, I'll be back. It's, I'll see you in half an hour after I've either walked back from the base because someone's blown up all the cars, or, you know, or like, oh, I've been lucky, someone left a Humvee here, and then they just like meander on back, drive on into the middle of the field, go, oh guys, I'm here. Where's the war? Oh, we've moved on to another objective. Oh, all my positions are gone. Well, great. You know, what do I do from here?
Yeah.
But it's good. It's a beautiful. There's something just fun about this. The drive back in. It's this sort of like it's a reset. It's a hard reset, and not like in Call of Duty where it's a okay reset, but I'm still in the fight. It's like, all right, now I can reevaluate. It's time to get new gear, change my class around, or grab a car or something.
It really just evolved. So it's like people think, oh, like a simple Humvee, that doesn't seem like much. One rocket and half the people, well, half the health's gone, your engine's fucked, you're on fire. When in reality, in Battlefield, there's so many different forms, because the difference between Battlefield and Call of Duty, majorly, is the lack of health in Battlefield. It's like 3 or 4 bullets and you're dead. Yes, it's the same in Call of Duty, but it's like the higher end, like, you know, in like multiplayer, the harder to get guns at that. At the base level, you get shot by a pistol 3 times and you're already on like 4 health. If a snail does simple as blocks your path, you die of a heart attack. And so when you think, oh, I'm just going to ride around in an ATV, that doesn't seem like a smart thing. Especially since half the mutations that people have can just blow you up immediately. So when you're sitting in a tank and you just see this dude driving towards you in like a 4-wheeler, you think, huh, what an idiot, I'm just going to shoot him with a cannon. Yeah. He jumps out of the 4-wheeler, it hits you, and then suddenly half of your tank's gone, and you just sit there wondering what happened, until you realize that they have put C4 onto the ATV, drove it up to you, jumped out, blew it up, then run up behind you, and now they're currently shanking all of your tank members that have just disembarked.
And that really is the sort of the Battlefield 3 experience. It was in that weird era of video games where they weren't as refined as they are now, or so as polished, but they weren't completely jank, so they'd have all these cool features. They were just cramming stuff in to see what worked. So you had people constantly trying to change the meta in really weird ways. I know just before I started playing, there was the whole thing using the MAV drones as elevators, people jumping on these little like scout drones and flying around the map, or you know, C4 cars were huge. Like you'd just get a car, like you said, and chuck C4 on it, and you got a mobile nuke and just like detonate on tanks and trucks and stuff. It was this beautiful just mess that you don't get in multiplayer. You know, if you jump on Apex, it's Apex. Oh look, someone nerfed a gun, or someone's you know, change the damage charts on something for this month of gameplay. Whoop-de-doo. You just get, like, it's fundamentally the same experience every time. You can't experiment with it. It's just the same thing.
The major experiments you can get is, oh, I like the Volt SMG. Is the devotion good? Answer, no.
Yeah, no. Big no. Big no. So we need to, I think we need to, like, stay on track. So with Battlefield 3, the other thing that really got me was the squad-based gameplay. Other multiplayer games have always stressed, you know, do the objective, push the objective, play as a team. But this was the first game that I played that was really like, if you don't work as a squad, like individual squads within your team, you will lose. And it really, you'd have to, you know, if for those who don't know, when you play Battlefield, you're divided into smaller squads on a team. A team of 20 people could have 5 individual squads of 4. Yeah, what you're saying there, 4 people in a squad in a team of 20. And that way, it means that you know, spawn on each other, you sort of command each other, but it's very, again, it's that sort of, they're throwing features in, what works, and they just don't know. Because there was no way to communicate what you were doing other than walking towards a location or teabagging and jumping up and down and shit.
Because if you were the squad leader, you could tag objectives saying...
No, you couldn't. Not in Battlefield 3, you couldn't.
Oh, I thought you could.
I don't think so.
I thought it was like you could run to an objective and tag it, say, go here.
I don't think you could in Battlefield 3.
Okay, that might be a thing. It's definitely the next game.
I think that was... I'm not going to look it up. You know what? If I'm wrong, just put it on screen here. I'll just put a big thing here saying, Jake, you're a fucking idiot. So yeah, it was a complete change up of everything that we knew about these games. But in general, it's not the best. It was very janky. There was only a few maps. The DLC maps, they're good as I've heard. I never really played them. I was too poor at the time. I was a kid. I didn't have money for DLC. And if I did, it was going towards Call of Duty. I wasn't going to miss out on the zombies maps. I needed to play Die Rise.
What's this? $5? I can't spend that. I've got Soul Calibur characters to unlock.
That's one thing I'm not sad to see disappear. DLC could just fuck right off.
No. The paid DLC. The free DLC that came with like Battlefield 5, and they had those free DLCs. That was nice.
I think
DLC is nice. Just make sure it's cost relevant.
We'll get to that as well. But as shit as Battlefield 5 is, I really have to commend the way that they did the different DLC unlocks. Rather than having to fork out money to go and get extra content that only half of the player base is going to get, you know, it's better to have it so everyone's got it, so everyone's playing on the maps, and you're not just locked into 3 servers where everyone's got all the DLC.
One thing I really did like about, because like in all the games that we've listed off, it's like Call of Duty, you run around. Someone's like the most destructible thing in like Call of Duty was glass panes. Would you think I'm rocking around 400 rounds of ammunition? Do you think I can blow up some of these structures? Doesn't matter if they're alien or human, I can destroy them. See this mountain, I can blow it up. But no, the only destructible environment you get is shields. It's like the shield walls that you can place down, that you can like melee your way through, and they just pop back up. Call of Duty, just broken glass panes. With Frostbite, it just, everything is destructible.
Change the
damn
game.
near anything.
This is the first time I saw something of this extent or extreme, and it was just mind-blowing to think, here's a video game where I've got a tank and I can shoot a part of a wall away, like not collapse the whole wall. We hadn't reached like Frostbite 4 or 5 or whatever the hell they're running now. It was just like, oh man, oh, some concrete fell down. This is astounding, mother.
Some of my favorite shit was when you spawn into or when you get into a friendly helicopter and you see something, you just pull out your rocket launcher and you just shoot a hole in the wall, you parachute in, and then you just think, wow, that was awesome, and you turn around and you get shot by a tank. Yeah. But the tank shot you through a separate wall. Constantly evolving environments that just kept things spicy. In Call of Duty, it's like, oh, I'm just gonna hide in this corner and wait till someone has a rocket launcher. But in this, it's like, you don't have to wait. You just have to pray that no one has a rocket launcher.
But the game does have its flaws, of course.
I love them.
Yeah, you can love a game, warts and all, but you have to talk about them. The destructibility wasn't too stellar. Houses would just have like preset destruction they could take, and then they'd just sort of, they'd never fully collapse. There'd always be enough to stand in. It was just sort of, Gunplay was really weird over distances. It was so rife with Smurfs and just people playing like either Smurf accounts or accounts with like 80,000 kills on a gun. And then you just have to question like, what do you do outside of Battlefield 3?
And on the map Damavand Peak, there is right before the drop, there is a building on Rush. There is a building which one of the objectives is right next to it, and what you can do is collapse the building, snuggle into the building into a very specific gap that completely hides you from the enemies and is right behind the objective. Put C4 on the ground, hide behind it, wait till someone comes up to defuse it, blow it up, and then when they die they think, I'm dead. Oh, that's where the asshole is. And then because that, if someone comes along, and even if you don't blow them up, they come along, disable it, you can just re-enable it immediately.
And the jump after you're done with that, and just being able to jump off the cliff and parachute into the next set of objectives. It was so good.
If you bring a Humvee from the start of the map, you can drag it all the way down there. And I remember we used to try it every single time.
Yeah. The game was just unbelievable. Like, I cannot believe to this day that game existed in the state that it did. It was just this beautiful mix of like bad ideas, poor execution in a lot of cases. Like that map, Damavand Peak, just had this terrible tunnel section afterwards where you just get boxed in and killed for hours on end. But
you never would survive that part.
It was terrible. It was just difficult. But it was this weird, eclectic mix of bad decisions, very primitive technology, feature creep, just all these problems. But dear God, it was a good game.
One of the best. So Battlefield 1 is the, of course, next game that we're going to talk about. And the reason why we're not going to talk about Battlefield 4 or Hardline is, well, pretty obvious. Battlefield Hardline, nobody likes. It is regarded as one of the worst, just one of the worst ones. And the reason I'm not going to talk about Battlefield 4 is because, the same reason, nobody likes it.
It's much the opposite. Everyone loves Battlefield 4. So chances are, if people came to our Battlefield retrospective, chances are they're waiting for our thoughts on the most popular, most long-lived. I mean, people are still playing Battlefield 4 to this day, and it's still just insanely popular.
I've never played it. I've never played 4 or Hardline.
And then, what comes on the horizon? But this brand new Battlefield game, that's a World War I shooter.
Which, I thought, World War I, that was just a place that was just filled with trenches and just sitting back. There's no reason that's going to be fun. All people think about is getting trench foot in the trench while the enemy is on the other side of a land.
And so DICE did the clever thing, and instead of making a World War I game, they made a World War II game with World War I skins.
And it worked.
There's no denying it. It isn't a World War I game. There's like Mill Sims which have that sort of vibe to them where it's all crawling along in trenches with bolt action rifles. Like honestly, the first gun you unlock for the engineer is like an SMG that was never real. Like never actually was used in World War. It was like, it's called the 1918 experimental for a reason. It's like they didn't exist. Well, I mean, there's legitimately weapons in the game which have their descriptions saying only 300 of these were made. But
meanwhile, I was rushing around in the middle of a gunfight, being shot by tanks and getting things blown up. Yeah, we're gonna get them back eventually.
And speaking of tanks, same thing. This one right behind us over here, A7Vs. They only made like 8 of these. Didn't stop them from making that the primary German tank in the game.
Although, should we talk about the fact that we stole one?
Oh yes, the Australian, yeah. Our greatest war story, our greatest accomplishment was Australian soldiers rushing no man's land to try and steal one of these A7Vs that had broken down. one of the 8, and they managed to get it, and they just towed its ass back to Australia, and now we've got it in our ACT, and it's the only one that's still around. Yes, but anyway, the game, I think they took the perfect path by deciding we're not making a World War I shooter. We're making a World War II shooter with a World War I skin, and it's just gonna be maniac fun with old-timey cars and trucks and guns and tanks.
Which, if we're going to talk about the cars, well, if we're going to talk about that, I guess we should talk about the differences between, well, that was made between 3 and 1.
Definitely. So the first most notable difference is obviously the setting, which we've talked about enough. But as a result, the gameplay is completely tilted. It helps as well that the player count drastically increased, at least for Xbox editions. I remember playing Battlefield 3 with maximum 24 players, and now all of a sudden it's like 16 players on a team, isn't it? 32 player games?
There was a lot more, because back in Battlefield 3, most normal, because when you go to do a game, you'd usually go into the server browser, because there would be people specifically setting up the 1,000 ticket games, because
Yeah.
you know, we liked playing long games. Though the dice ones, they were generally 500, 400 tickets, so they were over
250.
10 minutes.
250 tickets was the standard baseline.
And that's even worse. And we got, you know, you would always go server browser, and then immediately all of those were just filled. It's just like, people wanted more. And DICE listened. They said, you know what, let's make the default ticket for the 750. You want 1,000? Here's 1,000. And they were the official servers. People had to make their own servers to make them go down.
Yeah.
Which is great.
The matches in this are much faster. Oh, much slower, sorry. Much slower. Where it really has you sort of go, we need to hold these objectives, we need to move towards this, we need to assert air superiority. It felt far more tactical, but also as a sort of result of the vehicles, it felt like everything was more measured. So rather than just jumping in an Apache helicopter or a Super Hornet jet and blowing shit up, it'd be, let's get in a plane and slowly crawl towards the battlefield.
Yeah, I could never ever get the handle on planes. No matter whatever game I play, it's always, planes are too fast.
Well, think faster then.
Because then in Battlefield, when they introduced the bomber, I thought, that's a slow plane. I'm going to fly that plane.
No.
And then I did. And I actually got some kills for one time.
All the planes in that they were so nice and slow to handle. It felt like just cruising on down the highway. And the other overhaul to talk about was the squad system, where you'd finally be able to, like, people would listen, like you'd need to be a squad leader. You get extra points if you attacked an objective that which you marked, and you'd be following each other around. It felt finally like, oh, we'd taken the system from Battlefield 3 that was very poorly sort of thrashed together, and we've really made it work. It hasn't reached its final form yet. There's still Battlefield 5 to talk about, but it felt purposeful for the first time.
Yeah, it finally felt like being Battlefield 3 introduced people to actually working as a squad, while Battlefield 1 reminded people that not only working as a squad, but working as the entire team. And we can't talk about differences without talking about the behemoths.
Yes, the behemoths. This was without a doubt the hypest shit. As seen behind us, we have a cameo by the worst behemoth, the Hindenburg, the worst behemoth. No, this was hype as shit. Like, jumping into a match and being on the losing side, which was more often than not, the moment that your squad fell below a certain margin from the other team, EA was like, hold up, now I see what you're doing, I see you suffering, so take this. And you just have a blimp fly on in, and it had guns everywhere. It was just incredible. And granted, if you were being stomped, then it wouldn't really change anything. You'd just have a fancy toy for a little bit. But if anything, it made you happy, god damn it.
And just the, not only that, but just like, there was like in the beginning, there was like three types of behemoths. There was the blimp, which boasted, it was the captain who had two bombing
ability, yeah.
I remember one time we were getting absolutely thwomped by on one of the maps. Month to get up, but that was it. We were getting absolutely swamped by those aforementioned cannons, and it was just we were just dying. And so then I got into the blimp, and I understood because the moment I jumped in, they had like 4 like fighters, all with the airbusters, so they just kept demolishing us. And so I just decided, you know what, fuck this, I'm gonna fly over them. So the dreadnought had like 20 health, and so I flew over the giant guns, and then I died. But because I was over it, it landed on the guns, and immediately like half the enemy team died because everyone was swamped down there because they had the AA guns, the giant guns, and so then we didn't win, but we started getting back because they no longer held the objectives.
It was so fun. It was so fun, in fact, that DICE had to remove it from the next game. No, they were trying to save up. They were banking up their fun for Assassin's Creed Origins, and then they shit the bed with that as well.
The maps in Battlefield 1 were they were vast.
They were girthy.
Yes, like you had just unprecedented amount of terrain. It was just like one map, Monte Grappa. It's just mountains, and then Sinai Desert. It's a desert, and it's just got sandy hills. So you go from rock cover to sand cover, and then some of it's like the entire map of Monte Grappa is like on an angle because it's on the side of a mountain. So it's just like everything's on a lane. So then you have to get used to that, and then everything's on a flat plane.
And I think what Battlefield 1 also introduced was the idea of multiple battles happening in the same war. So it's like in Sinai Desert, there's an objective way out in the middle of just the sand. And you head out there, and there's like a whole entire other faction. You could have 4 or 5 of your team out there fighting at any given time with some of their others. There'd be tanks, planes, all that. And you'd be free to fight the other end of the map with another war entirely. And like you wouldn't even see each other the whole match. You might flip around a couple of times, but it really gave you this view of it not just being like in the earlier Battlefield games. Here's almost like trenches and tunnels. It's like here's one consistent path of enemies and friends fighting each other. It was almost like you're in a war. Like everywhere you go, there's going to be someone fighting. It was great.
And with the out of the behemoth on that map, it would just make it just absolute chaos.
Yeah, the train.
But the greatest thing about that map, and very few other maps, was that they had environmental like the environment would change. You'd be running through, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, a sandstorm would hit.
But never as often as I'd wish. Like, it only happened every so often, but when it did...
Yeah, it was great, because it was, like, sometimes really scary, because you'd be running along in the middle of a sandstorm, thinking, where the fuck is Objective A? And then you turn, and then when you're running through, you just see this car come out from nowhere, and it misses by you. Only to see it on the map stop and start turning around.
And fucking Mad Max drifting out from between the dunes. I absolutely adored those maps. And even the smaller maps, you know, I've never been a fan of the small ones simply for the same reason that I prefer Battlefield over Call of Duty. I like the big areas and the sweeping warfare. But the small maps like Suez Canals and Argonne Forest, you know, they hold a special place in my heart as both some of the most infuriating and some of the most joyous moments that I've ever had playing online games.
Especially when you start fucking running around with certain weapons when there's tight corners. Fucking trench gun.
But on that note of guns, the weapons of this game completely changed. Nothing. It changed fucking nothing. What am I saying? It's what we said before. It was just a reskin, right? Every gun was just a slower firing, shittier weapon you'd seen in the game before. It's worth noting that all the guns in this game, pretty much all of them, they felt bad.
One of the vehicles that they added in with one of the DLCs, I think it was developed in 1919, but it was just on the cusp of like it was being planned in 1918, and it was finished, or like the first prototype was released in 1919. So they said, but you know, they could have had one back then.
Yeah, of course. Even when you're aiming down iron sights, it felt like when you're playing like Halo 1 or Halo 2, and everything's really floaty, and you're sort of... there are no iron sights, everything's hip-fired, so everything you're sort of just hoping it hits. It felt the same all the time during Battlefield 1, and it just didn't have that sort of modern Battlefield feel to it, or modern shooter feel to it. You play, you know, something popular today, and you feel it's tight, it's refined. Even if it's not hit scan, it feels like your guns are reacting the way they should be. But in Battlefield 1, it was just anarchy, and it was perfect. It was exemplary of the era, and polished as much as they could without seeming ridiculous.
And didn't they switch things up? Like certain weapons that were like the LMGs were like the support class. Would like some heavy hitters will go to like the assault, and like the recon would get like a medic semi-auto rifle or something.
They changed some stuff, but
yeah, it changed little.
Do you want to talk about how we single-handedly changed the meta of the whole game?
We'll get to that.
No, I think we can talk about that here in the. Since we're talking about weapons, we might as well like keep it consistent.
We are losing objective Edward.
But
okay, yeah.
I think I don't know whether it's us or how much of this I'm attributing to ourselves, but
I'm saying it's us. We did this.
We jumped on soon after the game came out, and we stuck around till it died, you know, proper, till like Battlefield 5 came out. And across that time, we saw the birth, rise, and fall of the AT rocket gun as an offensive weapon instead of like a tank killer or a building destroyer. And I think we started it.
Because I remember I would just be running around certain maps, just thinking, man, I think it was the assault that had it. It was like, I'm the assault, and there's a sniper over there, and I really want to kill him. So I'm just going to use my AT rocket. So
Yeah.
I'm using it.
It reminds me back in Battlefield 3, when people would buy servers, like we were talking about, they'd often implement their own rules, and the rules were always no reactive armor, which was like a one-time rocket-proof armor on tanks, no IGLAs, so they could just fuck around in helicopters and jets. And I feel like if there were servers with names and titles and stuff in Battlefield 1, it'd all be no AT rocket guns, because nothing else would stand up to just the devastation that thing could wreak. We shot down planes, you'd shoot down blimps.
I'd never seen, like, I had never been killed by a rocket gun unless I was around a vehicle. That was the only time I've ever get killed by a rocket gun. And then after I did it, like a couple weeks later, I started dying to the rocket gun. And then it would just keep piling up and piling up. It doesn't matter if I was near the vehicle or not. People were always using the rocket gun. I remember one time in Argonne Forest, I was laying down on the not the German side, but the other side of the bridge, Objective C, and I was shooting rocket guns over. Then I see rocket guns coming back, and then there'll be like 4 more like assaults with me, and we'll be shooting over, and then they'd be shooting back. It would just be this like not kamikaze, but it's just this ungodly amount of rockets just being shot at both sides, and it was just so fun.
It was.
So we single-handedly started the murder, and we don't apologize whatsoever.
No. But what really should be discussed about this game and Battlefield in general is 2016, you know, this is what, a year before Fortnite, or 2 years before Fortnite or something?
Yeah,
this was
something like that.
The last big multiplayer game that we played before DLC just sort of disappeared.
Yes.
Because from here on, it was people were realizing that having your players spend $10, $15 or $20 for a DLC every so often, every few months, it just didn't stack up to other methods. You know, Netflix was new, subscription models were coming out, and they were realizing they're not like Xbox is getting a good cut off of Xbox Live, but you know, DICE are making a game, selling it to you for $60 US or $100 Australian, and that's it. That's the only cut of the money they're getting, and they're like, well, get this, the trickle of DLC isn't enough, and not everyone's going to get it. So as soon as the Battle Pass system came out and loot crates and all that, they realized, well, it's time to change, lads. And
yeah, well, they did have loot crates, but it wasn't like it wasn't even pay to win. It was just like oh, spend like $11 and get maybe two legendaries in this special crate, or you could just log in for like a week and then get enough like in-game scrap which can use to create things, get enough to build one of them. So it's like just play for a week, play a good game for a week, and you get a cool skin that you can put on one of your guns. And it was a nice little system.
It was
but then
very different.
You always get the same legendary every single time.
There was the infamous Summer of Schlatt, I called it, where every single every fucking crate we opened, I had this thing going with a mate and we were playing it, and sure enough you'd earn a legendary crate every few days, and inside them there was just this period of time where they'd cycle out what was available in the legendary crates. And this one here, it had a few skins that were like specifically to do with like camo wraps, so they'd have like netting and all that stuff over it. And there was one for the 1918 experimental SMG, and it was called the Kaiserschlacht. And I pulled something in excess of 10 or 12 of them, and it was a joke towards the end. And we just called it the Summer of Schlacht because it was all that everyone was fucking pulling. But enough of that bullshit. That stuff's around. But the Battlefield 1 was the last Battlefield game to have like full-on DLC, and they were all shit.
Yeah, like there was that one Fortress one which had that zombie Easter egg where if you walk up to a door and sit there for long enough, you start doing like moans and yelling on the other side.
Yeah, it's like,
that's like the only interesting thing about that, because it took away the Battlefield from Battlefield. Barely, like there were some walls that you could destroy, but the entire thing was this one bunker system, which yes, it was unique and quite interesting since it had the French, the French side of the war.
Yeah.
But it was just boring because it just didn't have as much a destructive environment.
And also the battle was boring as shit.
Like no one wanted the bunker. All
the French DLC was just fields, trenches, and the one village they had, or two villages, were terrible. The Russian DLC was just abysmal. I can't remember I played like each map once or twice, and it was disgusting. Then even the Gallipoli, the Australian one, like that map was bad. It was just like some more desert and rocks. Like there wasn't. There was
so bad because I don't even remember the Australian DLC because I played it that little.
It was the last one to come out. No one played it.
Because that was during its death. That was, going the time when it was going down. They said, hey, we're going to be releasing the Gallipoli campaign. You guys like it? And of course, well, us being Australian, I thought I'd like it. And I jumped on it, and I didn't like it. I played like 10 matches total of the Australian campaign, and it was just bad.
The problem as well was that no one was playing it, We've hit a cycle in multiplayer games now, where people don't play a multiplayer game for like 7 years, like Halo 2 or 3 or something, right? They buy the game, they play it for a year, and they move on. And I think that was the catalyst for them to go, we can't spend 2 years developing DLC anymore. No one's going to buy them. No one's going to stick around to play them. And that, along with the Fortnite model and the Battle Pass, they realize it's better to just drip feed out this content and move it along at a slow pace, just keep you sort of engaged just that little bit.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, our next game. And here we are, ladies and gents. As of recording this video, latest installation in the Battlefield franchise.
Yes.
Battlefield 5.
They went forwards with this one.
They went forwards. They took some steps forwards.
No, I meant in terms of numbering. It went 3, 4, hard luck, 1, and now 5.
They went forwards, and they took 1 or 2 steps forwards with the actual game, but they were drunken steps on like a wet, rainy road, and there was a glass on it, and they fell over it. They cut themselves, and it really, really hurt, but they just kept on walking, and they just didn't think much of it. And by the time they got home, they were disheveled and just distraught. Here we are. We're the unfortunate relatives that have to dust them off when they come in the door. first off, the obvious thing, you know, no one's blind to this anymore. This is like 2018. It was the real sort of pickup of like full-on wokeness on the internet. You know, this was the thing where they decided we're gonna have a female character with a prosthetic limb in the video, right? Power to them. It's, you know, just a video. They've obviously chosen to use a character like that, not out of some deep-seated, you know, decision to go and try and show solidarity. It's like, well, this is current, this is marketable, so we're going to do it. So they did it, and you know, whatever. They need to sell copies. So from the get-go, we know this isn't an accurate game. It isn't like Battlefield 1, you know. Oh no, it's like Battlefield 1. They're not legit. They're just fucking fantasies. Which is fine. They let us know from the get-go, and sure enough, the game itself is nothing like World War II simulators and stuff. It's fucking like just crazy shit. But what happened was the fallout after that game came out. After the first announcements dropped. Do you remember this? What happened on Twitter and all that with the devs?
Yes, very, very prominently. But though, let's act as if I didn't.
Okay, well...
Listen, my mind is in the gutter.
How did you miss such an event? This was the event of the century, this was.
Oh, I don't have Twitter.
No, do I. But it was after the game came out, or the first previews came out, people were complaining about it and saying it. One of the devs, or one of the higher-ups, said something to the effect of, if my child, my young girl, plays a video game and says, why can't that person look like me? You know, why do I have to play as a guy? Why can't I play as a girl? He said, I don't want to be the one to have to tell her it's because this game isn't built for you, or this game, you can't do it because you're not a guy. And he said, if I have, you know, this is my perspective, like, this is something I don't want to have to do, you know, I want everyone to have the opportunity.
And I do commend him for doing it. It's just that, how young would your child be? Because it's an MA15 plus game, at least here in Australia.
Well, you just hope that they'd have the emotional maturity by that point to just go and say, oh, I get it. It's recreating this it's actual real life conflict and it's a war and all this crazy shit. Which is why from the get-go they were like, okay, we're doing a revisionist World War II. Just like they did a revisionist World War I, where everyone used automatic guns and SMGs in forests and quickscoped and flew jets into the planes into shit. This is the same thing, you know? There's like some of the ultimate classes are just like ripped guys with like no shirts going into war. It's like, they wouldn't fucking do that. They'd be wearing helmets. They won't die, you know? Some of the people, there's like... I
want to romanticize them.
Yeah, well, it is full on. It's romanticizing all of war, and it's you know, putting in ridiculous characters and ridiculous skins and, you know, all that sort of crap, right? Because it's just trying to it's full on throwing the whole any semblance of a realistic shooter thrown right out the window.
Yeah,
and that's good. Because if people wanted a real shooter, they'd play Armor or something. Like, that's not what Battlefield's for. Battlefield's for mindless fun and driving cars into shit.
Which, unfortunately, has, the fact that you could launch dynamite or put dynamite into your car and drive it into people, that's a topic for later on, but I didn't really see much of that in this game.
No. That really is the difference between this and Battlefield 3. It really is the end of the experimentation era. You know, no one's driving crazy stuff into corners of the map and trying to clip through. It's just like, log on, shoot, and log off, you know?
Yeah.
And part of that could just be people growing up and, you know, things. But games are getting smarter. It's not like Battlefield 3, where they included everything they could think of because they wanted to try and just do everything. It wasn't this feature creep of 1,000 things. Battlefield 5 was like, alright, we're just doing this and this. Is this the end of the retro warfare era, though?
What do you mean by that, my man? My good sir?
You know what I fucking mean. I mean, like, is this the last war game we're going to see set in, like, World War 1 or 2 for, like, another 10 years?
Hopefully not. I like that setting.
I mean, the only reason it came back is because World War 3 was done to death. But now we've had Call of Duty, World War 2, Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5. You know, there was that game by the Raid by the guys who made Payday, there was this influx of AAA games being developed in the world.
And there's Cold War.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, Cold War's a little bit more recent, you know, there's more modern stuff.
Yeah,
but
but it's still like, you know, they still just use a lot of stuff from Bloody World War II, so I like to group in that same category.
yeah, but at the same time, they released the Modern Warfare remaster, or Modern Warfare 2019 or whatever. So they're up on it too. No, I think that it really is like, I feel like it's the end of it. Like, people have had their fun. Like, here's your little 4-year nostalgia trip, 5-year nostalgia trip. You know, now get back out there. Back to Modern Warfare. Back to futuristic. Back to Halo.
Which, part of me is relieved of, because, you know, if we just constantly had every single game being just World War II and World War II, it would just be pretty boring, because it's just like, you know, it's the same setting. I think World War One isn't a game that should be done like a setting, because like DICE have, you know, well, DICE, I think, well, they perfected it with Battlefield 5. No, I don't want to say perfected. They made World War One fun.
Battlefield 1, Liam. So Battlefield 5.
I'm so sorry.
Don't
Sorry, I got them mixed up.
This is the other thing, the fucking numbering system. Like, just stop doing it. Doom 2016? Don't call it Doom. Call it, like, Doom 4. Don't call it...
Doom Eternal.
It's... Whatever. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just... I don't want to see World War One as a setting. DICE did it. It was great, but then, you know, it's only great in the Battlefield aspect because of all the things that led up to it. World War Two, it's a nice thing. It's, you know, sure, it's an intriguing period of time, but, you know, it's been done to death like Modern Warfare. So there's really no real warfare, like anything. World War Three is done to death. The Future War is done to death. Two's done to death.
And with the end of the era, I think we should round out what finally changed in this one. Like, there wasn't much of a jump from Battlefield 1 to 5, but, you know, there was a few improvements.
Good. Especially, again, there's a recurring theme that the first thing we say, the squads.
I've never, it's other than Rainbow Six and games like that, I haven't played a single one which has made the squad feel more important than Battlefield 5.
Although, might you talk about the special treatment that the squad leader got?
Oh, the squad leaders, like their abilities to call in things, that changed everything. To just, it's like now not only are you rewarded as a player, like with experience, it's like you're rewarded in game. You know, if you all follow objectives, for those of you who don't know, because a lot of people skip this. Every time you do a squad action, whether it's capture a flag, take an objective, go a certain direction, you get experience points not just towards your account, but as currency. And then you use that currency to call in mortar strikes and smoke barrages, or giant, like, thermonuclear bombs.
that you only get like 4 kills with.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Oh, it's so much fun. And the levolution in this game, like, they really took it up a notch. Granted, it's still World War II.
Ground revolution.
Granted, it's still, like, you know, World War II, so it's just little fucking villages in Austria. But the fact is that now you're knocking out windows, you're taking out parts of walls, you know. Explosions are leaving actual craters in the ground. Like, I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. To see these physics in a modern setting.
Okay, and another addition that was added, which does add a bit more of a spice to it, was the building mechanic.
Oh, that was so fun. Such a stupid little thing, it rarely did anything, but it was just great fun.
It was just so weird because, you know, you're told to use your build tool, which, you know, you can run over to, like, well, when you whip that Morfang out, certain areas will be highlighted, like windows will be highlighted, saying you can build like things here that can stop people from shooting in, or like if there's a wall gone, you can put sandbags up to build it up. You can put barbed wire down to stop people. You can put the anti-tank things.
You can even dig holes in some locations. Like, it was brilliant.
And it's so hard because in the middle of one of the maps, Mercury, on objective C to B, on that hillside, you
Yeah.
can dig a ginormous trench system from like one side of the hill all the way to the other. And you can build up sandbags, you can put down blocks that people stand on. It was so amazing. And we didn't know this until like halfway through playing it. You discovered it. You were just like running around and you said, well, we can do this here?
And I think with this, the Battlefield series has finally come full circle with Levolution, where Battlefield 3 was like, it was revolutionary, just how good it was. But that they were always worried about taking away too much of the battlefield and leaving it flat. So it would always be a thing of, oh, we'll make it so part of the building falls down, or a little bit falls down, but just enough that you can still use it. Yeah, it stopped being so much about what can we retain, what can we keep, because players could always just go off and put down a few sandbags. With this, we've sort of covered a lot of stuff now, so why don't we just round out, what was the World War II maps and guns and vehicles like?
The guns, they felt nice to hold. They were cool. Because all of them had like the nice amount of recoil, the bullets that rang out. If you were standing in a corner, you'd hear the bullets just hit, or you'd hear the sound hit the wall, then go back at you. So you can get this really nice echo effect. It was just so nice. The maps, they were lacking, unfortunately, some of them. There was some really good maps.
There was like one or two that really stood out, but for the most part it was just, I don't know. It suffers from World War II-itis, where it's like, do we go to Stalingrad again? Do we go to, the Battle of the Bulge again? Do we go to the invasion of Britain again, like the Battle of Britain? It's like, we've seen all these in movies and video games for the better part of a century now. And it's almost like, what can we see that we've never seen before? And Battlefield took the route of fields, tiny villages.
Yeah, there was one of them, just Twisted Steel. It was a giant bridge through a marshland. That was fun. It just so happened to be in the middle of a shit snow map.
In the map rotation, you mean?
Yeah, the map rotation. It was just a shitty snow map, shitty field map, shitty city map, good map, shitty, good, sand, shitty, bad, good. It was just so many bad maps in a row that would lead up to the best. Like the greatest one was Panzerstorm, because you can have like an upwards of like 6 or 7 tanks on both sides at once.
That was an incredible map. Just this, like, that was the best tank/soldier warfare that I've seen in any game ever. You have huge like deployed units, there are planes, there are people. It's just a mad like rush to fight for the center. It was great.
And not only to mention about the tanks themselves, because in Battlefield 3 they had like, what was it, like 2 tanks per team, like,
2
in
tanks total.
the general sense, 2 tanks total.
Yeah, because unlike
then Battlefield 1 comes around and it's got like 4 German and like 5 Allied, but they have a skill trees which you can go down.
That was the other thing. For the first time in Battlefield history, customizing your vehicle is fun. The customization on the planes, you could equip it for fast attack, you could put bombs on it, flares, you could use it for deployment. It was so clever. It was done better than anything I could have hoped for. The vehicles in this game are impeccable. So in that case then, because after the game came out and all this was here and people were like, it was still the World War II Renaissance. Everyone's going, "Away, welcome back, yeah." What killed it?
I think it's because the gameplay loop was just, it was too much, just the same as before, but like a little bit boring. I remember that I was watching this one video, explaining how the respawning loop in Battlefield 5 was absolute garbage, because it was because you run around and you die, then you want to spawn your teammates, but the game won't let you because they're in combat, and sometimes you will spawn in when they're out of combat and then spawn you back saying, oh, they no longer exist.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
The respawning, it's because when a teammate is in combat, it's either they're shooting or someone's shooting at them. Doesn't mean that there's enemies around. So you can. So when they say they're in combat, they're shooting or being shot at, which is good. But then when they're not in combat and you spawn on them, you'll spawn down. You pull out your gun, then immediately bam, dead by a bomb, or like get immediately bum rushed 1 second later by half the enemy team screaming running over the hill.
Yeah, it was pretty shit. I had so many problems with just. It really does feel like the analogy of the drunk man stumbling home, filthy, piss-covered clothes and half-empty bottle. It's just a nightmare.
And it's sad because Battlefield was a great series and franchise.
Yeah.
Of course, there'll always be the black, they are black sheeps, as they say, of the franchise. Like, of course, Hardline was one of them. And now Battlefield 5, but because it's been more modern and was hyped up to be such a great game, it's going to leave a darker stain on their
Just legacy.
Yeah.
But they do have, in the later parts of the game, they did try and fix up a lot of it. It's not good, it's not perfect, but the Japan DLC was great.
It was like the first free DLC like we've ever experienced.
Oh yeah, this was it finally. This is the influence, right? We've talked about this whole story and now we've reached the conclusion. From paid DLC from the 2010s and late 2000s all the way through to the current battle pass method, which encourages you to buy cosmetics and that, and it worked wonders in terms of keeping the game alive. It kept people on for a lot longer than they would have otherwise. And I think the main reason why is because it meant that you weren't separating your audience into the haves and have-nots, Everyone could play the Japan DLC. You didn't need to try and find small servers with people who had it. You just played it. It was perfect.
And also all the content that came with it.
And all the content, all the guns and weapons. It kept you involved to unlock them. It was a really nice implementation of that sort of system. But alas, that is the story of Battlefield 5. And
the series, the franchise, just
for now.
Hopefully for now, because, well, as you said, the series is in the dumpster and it's on fire. Even though this one isn't, we hit it around back because it's just it will just be too bad if we don't want dumpster fire.
We don't want a dumpster fire. We might damage all the grommet mugs. I guess that's the end of it. It's the end of its. This is our recap of 10 years of Battlefield, give or take a few years of break from Battlefield 4 and Hardline, but we've covered half of the ones which have come out in the last decade, and
the good ones.
Battlefield 4 was apparently good, but
no, it wasn't.
But I think we'll keep an eye on the franchise. I'm looking forward to what comes next, and I hope all you lovely sons of bitches stick around and you're here for when the next one happens.
Indeed.
All right.
Wait, what about the campaign?